Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Kevin Modis. I'm a person with a disability. I've been a disabilities advocate for 20 years with the California Brain Tumor Association. We work with 200 scientists from 39 countries, and you can see information at emfscientist.org. And you can see information more about what I'm talking about at saferemr.com. I've come to this group as kind of appealing to you to lead the way in other ways also, and be really the conscience of the FCC. We work with people who have developed brain tumors from their wireless devices, and we work with people who have developed neurological problems from wireless radiation. That doesn't exclude people who are also developing immune system disorders and are having reproductive harm from wireless radiation also. And the science certainly supports what we're seeing out there in the field, basically. The FCC, unfortunately, has led the way and made a concerted effort to hide wireless health effects and take systematic steps to kind of obscure it. The industry has filled the research with low-quality research, and they've used a weighted approach, a weighted evidence approach, to say, oh, well, we're not sure, because they filled really the picture and the landscape with all kinds of low-quality research. Most recently, the National Toxicology Program study that was commissioned through the U.S. government, it was a $25 million study that showed clearly that wireless radiation causes brain cancer and heart cancer non-thermally and is basically neurotoxic. This was the largest study of its type ever done, and it collaborates with other studies that have done in the past. It was a very important study because it collaborated. The cells that became cancerous in the subjects they looked at were the same cells that became cancerous in human studies from before. And it collaborated with the World Health Organization that's already classified wireless radiation as a possible carcinogen. So we expect with this study for the World Health Organization, according to its own rules, to have to increase wireless radiation from a possible carcinogen to a probable, if not a class 1 human carcinogen like cigarette smoke. So you're talking about blanketing our country with wireless radiation that is carcinogenic, neurotoxic, and genotoxic. And unfortunately, the FCC has chosen to do this in the name of people with disabilities, in the name of increasing access, when there's a very safe alternative, which is wired connections to the internet and phones. And the recent move away from landlines to pull up landlines and basically force people over to wireless, maximizing their exposure, is an absolutely harmful, horrendous step that they're taking. And again, they're using people with disabilities and their access as the reason to do these things. So for this reason, I'm asking that people with disabilities become the conscience, become informed, and step up. What we do know is that people with neurological disorders and other medical conditions are more vulnerable to this type of health effects. And I'm submitting to this committee, in my public comment, a letter from the former director of the radiation department at the EPA that says that our safety standards were never intended to be applied to people with medical conditions, people who are elderly or children, and yet that's exactly who they're focusing on right now and getting the maximum exposure. I'm also going to submit to this committee the Resolution 1815 from the European Parliament that acknowledges electrosensitivity, that people are becoming neurologically sensitive, people that don't have any type of neurological sensitivity before but are now developing it now. They also recommend that we minimize people's exposure and that for children we use wired connections. This is a European Parliament passing a resolution for all of Europe. This is not a marginal issue. This is not a few people that the industries try to marginalize saying there's a problem. This is a definitive problem that we've put underneath the carpets, and we're moving forward in the exactly wrong direction of maximizing exposure, starting people's exposure at very young ages, and moving it all the way through the spectrum, maximizing people's exposure in terms of home, work, and in between work, and even from satellites. And now looking at focusing, like the cigarette companies did, on focusing on children, people with disabilities, and the elderly. It's truly wrong what they've done, and it's been a systematic, very conscious effort to do this. Wireless devices were never tested for health effects when they first came out. Because they emit microwave radiation by law, they were required to be tested before they were put on market. They were given an exemption. They were also required to be tested after they were put on market, so to look for health effects that they arrived in people using them. They were given an exemption for that, and that never happened. The FCC has developed and adopted a thermal standard for looking at health effects. We know that standard is completely inadequate and only looks at part of the problem. Most of the wireless health effects are due to non-thermal health effects. It has nothing to do with power or heating. That's what our scientists say. That's what the evidence says. What it has to do with frequency and modulation, the size of the wave and the modulation, how it's pulsed. None of these frequencies have been tested for this. The Internet of Things is based on 5G technologies and new frequencies that have never been tested for this type of non-thermal effect. Our safety standards are severely inadequate. And if you look at emfscientists.org, these 200 scientists have made appeal to the United Nations saying just this. The other thing the FCC has done is that they are regulating this, and the FCC has no one qualified to set, maintain, or modify standards looking at the health of wireless radiation. It used to be the EPA. They had done their own studies. They had appealed to the FCC, and they had proposed, and we have documentation of this, of a thermal standard and a non-thermal standard, which takes the limits much, much lower. Unfortunately, they were then banned from participating in any more EMF research. They were then defunded, the program that was doing it, and they were taken out of the loop. The next year, the FCC was given the responsibility of looking at health effects and monitoring and maintaining this. This is a conscious effort to hide health effects from the public and to not protect our people. The 1996 Telecom Act, which we still use today to proliferate transmitters, that we are going to use today to proliferate 5G transmitters across our country, has a Section 704. In Section 704, it has been used to ban local and state governments from looking at health and safety when they place transmitters in their communities. That is a conscious effort to hide health and safety issues when they're placing these wireless transmitters. We know the cancer rates around cell transmitters are 3 times what they normally are. With 5G, the plan is a transmitter every 12 homes because the frequencies do not travel very well. They're very dense, and the FCC will admit it'll take many, many transmitters, millions of transmitters, and we are not, and they will be exempt also from looking at health and safety.
We appreciate your comment and concerns, and we will open it for other comments or concerns online or in line.
Just one more comment. The solution is to test these frequencies before we release them for biological effects, whether they harm the cells or oxidate the cells. That's all they have to do. There are frequencies that can carry data that do not cause harm. But right now, we don't have those frequencies. We have frequencies that are very powerful and travel very well. But they are truly, truly very harmful, and we need this committee to take action. This committee to be the conscience of the FCC and to demand that we have a sensible way of proliferating this wire relation, that we test it before we roll it out. It only makes sense. Ask any scientist, but the scientists and the cellular biologists are being ignored. We are going with engineers and physicists that only believe in heating as the health effect, and I can give you thousands of studies to show that basis for a safety standard is completely and absolutely incorrect.
Well, thank you for sharing your comment and also your website. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Elaine Gardner. Thank you very much for your comments. We've received a number of emails on the same issue, and we do thank you for this. There is an open proceeding, an open rulemaking on this. It's out of our Engineering and Technology Bureau, ET 13-84. This is before another bureau right now. With a new administration coming in, I think right now is a difficult time for us to comment on this, but we do really appreciate your comments, and and we will look at the emails on this, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
4 years since they haven't looked at that, but they've had 4 years they've been able to expand wireless exposure a great deal. So where are their priorities? It's pretty obvious.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. And there's more information available on your website, so thank you for sharing.